Ever feel like you're a ghost in your own home? Just invisible? Picture this. You're standing in a room with 120 of your closest friends and family. Everyone's clapping, cheering for your 30th wedding anniversary. And right then, your wife smiles and hands you a gift. Except it's not a gift. It's divorce papers. Then your son, the future lawyer whose $200,000 tuition you paid in full, shouts, "This is the best day ever. Just sign it, Dad. We'll sell that filthy garage, and I'll finally have the capital to open my own firm." Your daughter sighs, looking at you like you're a stain on the rug. Finally, she says, "No more living with the shame of having a mechanic for a father. They think they're dumping a loser. A blue-collar failure. What they don't know. For 30 years, while they looked down their noses at me, I was quietly building an empire. $5.2 million. 12 rental properties. 15 Bitcoin I snagged back in 2013, and $18,000 a month in passive income, double what the executive, my wife, is cheating with, earns in a month. My name is Alex Thompson. And that night, I decided to show them what happens when the man who's been silent for 30 years finally speaks up. Nobody was ready for the fallout. If you've ever been underestimated, disrespected, or if you just believe in the power of playing the long game, stick around. Because what happened next is the most calculated, cold-blooded act of kindness and truth you'll ever see. If you've ever been judged for the dirt under your fingernails or the clothes on your back, hit that subscribe button and drop a "I'm with you" in the comments along with your city. Every sub, every comment, it's a middle finger to everyone who thinks your value is based on what they see, and not what you're building in the dark. Let's go back to where it started. For 3 decades, I was the heart and soul of an auto shop in Detroit. But before you understand why that night changed everything, you need to know this. While they saw a grease monkey, I was building a fortress. And that secret was about to explode on the very night they chose to humiliate me. I remember when Ethan was 10. I gave him his first wrench. He looked at me like I was insane and tossed it in the trash the second my back was turned. I quietly picked it up and tucked it away in a corner of the garage. Little did I know, 20 years later, those same hands that threw it away would be reaching for it just to survive. Rain, snow, or sub-zero Detroit winters, I stayed at that shop to keep this city moving. But somehow my family saw that work as a badge of shame. It started small. Sarah would introduce me at neighborhood parties as working in the auto industry. She never had the guts to say, "He's a master mechanic," or "He's a technical expert." Just "in the auto industry." Like I was some nameless paper pusher in a basement. The kids picked up on it fast. Ethan, now 26 and in law school, became a pro at dodging questions about what I did. When his rich friends asked, he'd just shrug and say, "My dad's in industrial services." No pride, no detail, just services. Olivia was worse. At 23, with a fresh business degree, she was a master of the redirect. I once overheard her at a coffee shop. Her friend was bragging about her dad running some tech startup. "What about your dad, Olivia?" her friend asked. Olivia didn't miss a beat. "Oh, my dad's in a transitional phase with his projects." Transitional phase? I'd held the same job for 30 years. But in their eyes, I was a dead-end failure. Those little moments told me exactly where I stood. Like when Ethan needed $3,000 for his law school application fees. He asked me with this tone, like I should be grateful he was even stooping low enough to ask a poor man like me for help. "Dad, I know you probably don't have this just lying around, but ... I cut the check right then. Didn't even blink. That was 18 months ago. He never once wondered how I had that kind of cash ready to go, or when Olivia needed a cosigner for a student loan. The bank wanted someone with steady income and a killer credit score. She came to me last after she'd already asked her mom's brother and 2 family friends. "Dad, I hate to ask you, But you're the only option left. I just stood there. Olivia kept her eyes glued to her phone. Her words were like a blade to the chest. I looked down at my rough hands, the grease stained. Into the skin, the kind that never truly comes off. In the silence, it hit me. I was the last resort. When every other door slammed shut, that's when they remembered the ATM named Dad. But what cut deepest wasn't the kids. It was the way Sarah, in her silence, fed that contempt. She was the architect of this disrespect. At dinner parties, she'd mock the simple things that made me happy, my old Red Wing boots, my work jacket. "Alex isn't complicated," she'd say, her voice cold as ice. "Just give him a few wrenches and a TV and he's fine." She treated me like a useful pet that provided a paycheck. I once heard her whining to her sister. He could have opened his own garage, been a big contractor, made real money. But he's too settled, too cautious. He's content just being a laborer. What she never saw coming was just how damn smart I was with that laborer's paycheck. My secret wasn't the number on my W-2. It was buried in a network of loyal clients I'd spent 15 years building: doctors, lawyers, high rollers who needed a master's eye to vet their luxury cars. They came to me because they trusted these grease-stained hands more than any salesman in a suit. Every successful consultation netted me a commission between $500 and $2,000, money Sarah never knew existed. She was too busy looking at the shadow of my salary to notice the financial goldmine I was digging right under her feet. Those silent dollars, earned through honest sweat and motor oil, were the first bricks of my empire. So while she was blowing cash at Target and taking the kids to overpriced bistros, I was obsessed with real estate trends. While she was distracted by new furniture and luxury vacations, I had my eyes glued to tech stock charts and the mysterious curves of Bitcoin. Every overtime shift, every midnight tow in the freezing Detroit snow, I was working while they were tucked away in the warm house I provided. They never stopped to ask why a lowly mechanic always had a stack of cash ready whenever they needed something. They couldn't imagine that those exhausting hours were molding a $5.2 million fortune, generating $18,000 a month in passive income. A real empire, growing steady and strong under the very chassis of the cars they despised. That money didn't go to waste. My first property was a small duplex on the outskirts of Detroit, bought back in 2008 when the market crashed. I put down $15,000 in cash and spent every weekend fixing it up myself. Within 6 months, I had stable tenants paying $1,200 a month, more than enough to cover the mortgage. But I kept it a total secret, because if Sarah knew, she'd find a billion ways to blow it on junk. If the kids knew, they'd see it as a green light to demand a bigger allowance. So I stayed quiet and kept collecting. The second house came in 2009, then a third in Lakewood in 2011, then a small apartment building in 2013. Every asset was handpicked. Everyone generated cash flow. And all of it was invisible to my family. By 2025, that portfolio had expanded to 12 properties worth $2.1 million. They'd see me come home covered in filth, looking like a ghost, and they'd conclude I was a loser. They never wondered why I never stressed about bills. They never asked how we always had what we needed on a tight mechanic's wage. That lack of respect became a daily habit. Ethan would borrow a few $100 every month, always with that patronizing tone, like he was doing me a favor by letting me help a future lawyer. Olivia treated family dinners like a charity event. She'd show up, eat, and stay glued to her phone. When I tried to talk about work, she gave me that polite fake smile you give a stranger in an elevator. And Sarah? She started looking at me like an obstacle to be cleared, like my presence was blocking her from a glitzier life with her boss. I started staying at the garage later, not because I had work, but because that house felt like a courtroom where I'd been sentenced to life for the crime of being ordinary. But there's one thing about mechanics. We're trained to hear the whispers of a breakdown. We feel the slightest vibration, the tiny moan inside a machine before it all snaps. By the summer of 2024, I heard that noise coming from my own marriage. I didn't just hear it. I smelled the rot. Sarah started giving off a different energy. It was the scent of expensive brand new perfume, not her usual fragrance. It was the intricate hair appointments. It was the spark in her eyes and that secret smile whenever she came home from late meetings, a radiant energy that had nothing to do with her exhausting ad job. The signs were as big as highway billboards, the frantic texts hidden when I walked by, the whispered backyard calls in the middle of the night, and the late-night arrivals becoming the new normal. I could have confronted her. I could have screamed and demanded the truth. But 30 years of crawling under complex engines taught me one ironclad lesson. Information is a weapon. Confrontation is just noise. So I became the mechanic of my own marriage. I watched. I listened. And I waited with the patience of a man who knows that every broken engine eventually tells on itself. The smoking gun arrived on a blistering afternoon in August. Sarah told me she was heading to a client meeting. Using my usual attentive husband routine, I offered to do a quick maintenance check on her Honda Accord. I opened the car door. The scent of a masculine cold cologne, not Sarah's usual smell, hit me like a punch. I turned the key, and the dashboard lit up. Within 3 minutes, my mechanic hands had gathered all the evidence I needed. The driver's seat had been pushed back exactly 4 centimeters from where I set it for her. There were streaks of red Riverside mud on the floor mat, and when I plugged in my diagnostic tool, the GPS history read like a death sentence. 7 stops at the Riverside Hotel in the last month. Everything clicked. The engine of my marriage was blown, and I just found the error code. Then came the final push, and irony so bitter it was almost funny. One afternoon, Mark Reynolds' Lexus rolled into my garage. He stepped out, looking at me like I was an oil stain. Careful with the leather. This Lexus is $75,000, he said, dripping with contempt. Yes, sir. Right in front of me, he pulled out his phone and called Sarah. Hey, Sarah, I'll pick you up at the Riverside tonight. Don't worry. Your husband hasn't a clue. That grease monkey only knows how to crawl under cars anyway. I stood perfectly still. The phone in my pocket quietly recorded every word. I smiled and nodded. Your car will be ready in an hour, sir. He had no idea that guys like me are the ones who listen best. I didn't need to be a detective to connect the dots. The emotional betrayal, I realized, was just the tip of the iceberg. The real game was still ahead. Sarah started hinting about selling our current house, wanting to split assets to find her freedom. She complained we were too poor and carrying too much debt at our age. That's when I saw her real play. She didn't just want out. She wanted to walk away with half of everything she thought was my only asset. The irony was terrifying. While she's losing sleep over imaginary debts, I'm clearing $18,000 a month in rent. While she's mocking my blue-collar wages, my tech portfolio, Apple, Tesla, and those 15 Bitcoin has ballooned into an investment. Nest egg worth over $3 million. All in, I'm sitting on a net worth of $5.2 million. She's terrified we won't have enough to retire, while I have enough passive income to live like royalty anywhere on the planet. But if I keep playing quiet, if I let this play out on her terms, I lose everything I've spent a lifetime building. See, here in Michigan, divorce gets real ugly for the person cheating if there's solid proof. She thinks she's walking away with half the house, half of my 30-year 401k, and the pittance of savings she actually knows about. She has no clue that Mark's Lexus and his sketchy plan to short his company's stock are exactly what's going to leave her with zero. That $35,000 I planned to leave her? That was just my last act of mercy before I closed the book on this chapter. But Sarah's plan has one fatal flaw. She's completely blind. She knows nothing about the properties or the investments. Every house, every share, and that entire Bitcoin vault, all in my name. Bought with the consulting commissions she never cared to notice while she was too busy on her luxury Target runs. Legally, those assets are mine. Under Michigan law, once I dropped the hammer with the proof of her cheating, her dream of splitting my $5.2 million empire is going to vanish into thin air. And morally? Well, that depends on how you feel about a woman who spent 30 years planning to dump her husband. The second she found a shinier model, the kids were in on it too. Ethan started dropping these subtle hints about how Dad was getting older. And maybe it was time for Mom to think about her own happiness. Olivia was constantly posting shots of fancy dinners and weekend getaway trips where I was either ghosted or treated like an uninvited guest. They'd been practicing for a life without me for a long time. The breaking point came in early October. Ethan called asking for $5,000 for law school expenses. When I asked for a breakdown of the cost, he got defensive. Dad, I don't need to justify every cent to you. It's for school, okay? Fine. 2 days later, Olivia called with the same vibe. $3,500 for her business startup. They weren't asking for help. They were treating me like an ATM they'd soon have full control over. That's when I knew I had to move. If I let this slide, I wasn't just losing a marriage, I was losing my self-respect. What they didn't know was that every dollar they took, I was logging as a final debt before I cut the cord for good. The showdown started on a random Tuesday night. Just the four of us around the dinner table, like we'd done 1,000 times before, but the air felt different. Everyone knew a storm was coming. Sarah made her guilt trip. Beef stew, the one she only cooks when she's hiding something. Ethan was in from law school, and Olivia drove in from her downtown apartment. It's so nice to have everyone together, Sarah said, cutting her meat with way too much precision. Yeah, Ethan chimed in. We should do this more often. While we still can. Like this family had an expiration date everyone knew about but me. I set my fork down. Got something on your mind, Ethan? He glanced at his mom. Dad, we've been talking about your future. About Mom's future. Our future. Our future? Sarah corrected him quickly. Right, the two of you. I stayed quiet, letting the silence get heavy. Olivia jumped in. Dad, you've worked so hard for so many years. Maybe it's time to think about what the next chapter looks like. The next chapter is retirement, I said. In 2 weeks, actually. Right, Ethan said. But after that, you and Mom might want different things. It's normal. People drift apart. Drift apart, I repeated. Or do people just make different choices? The sound of Sarah's fork hitting her plate was like a gunshot. Alex, what's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just thinking out loud. Ethan leaned forward. Dad, can I be honest with you? I'd hope so. You've been different lately, distant. Like you're angry about something. I almost laughed. Angry? Yeah, like you're resenting us for some reason. And why would I have a reason to resent you, Ethan? He looked at his mother again. Maybe because you feel like you haven't achieved what you wanted, and you're taking that frustration out on the family. The arrogance was mind-blowing. My son, a kid who hadn't worked a hard day in his life, was questioning my achievements. Exactly what is it you think I haven't achieved? Olivia answered for him. Dad, you know what we mean. People your age usually have more to show for their careers than just a garage and grease-stained clothes. With my business background, I can see you're just spinning your wheels. I smiled at Olivia, thinking about the 12 properties and the $18,000 a month she couldn't even fathom. Spinning my wheels, huh? Maybe you're right. Maybe it is time for a change. What do you mean? Like owning something, a business, real assets? I nodded slowly. Real assets. You've been an employee your whole life, Dad, Ethan said. Nothing wrong with that. But double quotes. But what? Sarah finally spoke up. But it limits our options, Alex, for both of us. What kind of options are you looking for, Sarah? Using her first name made her flinch. I only called her Sarah when I was dead serious. I'm just saying, maybe we both deserve a chance to explore what we want in the next chapter of our lives. The next chapter? I asked. One without each other? I'm not saying that, but that's what you're implying. The table went dead silent. Ethan cleared his throat. Dad, if you and Mom decide to restructure everything, we'll get it. We really will. Restructure? I repeated. Yeah, like the finances, this house, the savings. All of it. I looked around the table. I looked at the woman I'd been married to for 30 years. I looked at the son who'd borrowed thousands from me without ever asking where it came from. I looked at the daughter who felt ashamed to even say what her father did for a living. You guys have really done your homework, haven't you? I said. We just want everyone to be happy, Dad, Olivia chipped in. Everyone happy, got it. I stood up. Interesting. Where are you going? Sarah asked. To the garage. I've got some thinking to do. Dad, Ethan called after me. We're just trying to help. I stopped at the door. Ethan, let me ask you something. When you needed cash for law school, where do you think that money came from? $3,000 for the applications, $5,000 for expenses. Where did you think I got it? From your salary. The salary you just said wasn't enough to build anything meaningful? He didn't answer. Olivia, same question. When you needed a cosigner for a $30,000 student loan, what made you think I was qualified to sign for it? Dad, I don't get what you're trying to say. I'm trying to say that none of you ever bothered to ask what I was doing with my money. You just defaulted to the idea that I didn't have any. Alex, Sarah said, her voice cautious. What are you trying to tell us? I smiled. I'm saying maybe you should have been a little more curious about the man you're planning to divorce. The word divorce hung in the air like a dare. Who said anything about divorce? Sarah asked. Sarah, you've been planning this for months. Stop acting. That's ridiculous. Is Mark Reynolds ridiculous too? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The next morning, Sarah was gone before I woke up. Early shift, her note said. Funny, she'd never worked an early shift in her life. I made coffee and sat in the kitchen, replaying last night's conversation. They'd tipped their hand too early. They revealed the plan before they even knew who they were up against. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Thompson, it's Jenny from the property management company. We have an issue with the duplex in Detroit. Can you call me back? I deleted the text immediately. Sarah still snuck a look at my phone whenever she thought I wasn't watching. But that call reminded me of something important. My properties weren't just numbers in a bank account. They were real places where real people lived. People who relied on my responsibility, my reliability, my presence. Unlike my family, those tenants respected what I provided for them. 20 minutes later, another call. This time from the manager of my midtown apartment building. Mr. Thompson, it's Diane. The couple in 1B wants an early renewal. They're offering an extra $50 a month if we lock it in for 2 years. An extra $50 a month for 2 years. That's $1,200 in extra revenue just because people wanted the peace of mind of staying in a place I'd painstakingly renovated for them, I told Diane I'd think about it. As I was finishing breakfast, Ethan stumbled into the kitchen, hair a mess, wearing yesterday's clothes. Law school was clearly teaching him some great life management skills. Dad, about last night. What about it? Maybe we were a little harsh. Mom's just been under a lot of financial stress lately. Financial stress? I said. Interesting. She thinks we're carrying way too much debt. I almost choked on my coffee. What debt? The mortgage. Credit cards, you know. Ethan, we have exactly one credit card, and I pay the balance in full every month. Seriously? 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 Your mother never mentioned that? He looked genuinely confused. She told us you guys were struggling to keep up with expenses. What expenses? I don't know. The house, the utilities. Normal stuff. I set my coffee down. Ethan, how much do you think I make at my job? I never really thought about it. Just guess. Dad, I don't want to guess. He shifted uncomfortably. I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 grand. I nodded. 50 grand for crawling under cars. Covered in grease for 30 years in Detroit, right? You think that's a fair wage? I mean, it's okay for that kind of work. That kind of work ... Ethan, do you have any idea what a master mechanic in Detroit actually earns? He shook his head. My base salary is $82,000, with overtime, night shifts, emergency calls. Last year I cleared $105,000. His jaw dropped. And that's just the day job. What do you mean, just the day job? My phone buzzed before I could answer. The caller ID read, Property Solutions, LLC. This was it. The moment the secrets about the 12 properties and the $5.2 million empire started to leak. Excuse me, I told Ethan and picked up. Hey Steve, it's Alex. Hey Mr. Thompson, it's Steve from Property Solutions. We finished the appraisal on the suburban rental. It's perfect for the cash-out refinance. I'll have the paperwork Friday. Good work, Steve. Send it to my office email. You got it, sir. And congrats on the Midtown building. I heard you filled the vacancies ahead of schedule. Thanks. Location helps. Location is everything. See you Friday. Steve's words took me back to my darkest time, 2020. The pandemic hit and Detroit froze. 2 of my tenants lost their jobs. They couldn't pay for 3 months straight. My rental income shriveled like a punch to the gut. While Sarah was at home complaining about cutting back on shopping trips, I, the only one who knew the storm hitting my quiet empire, was fighting it alone. I dipped into my cash reserves, the non-existent fund I'd spent years building like a squirrel, to not only pay the mortgages on those properties, but to help my struggling tenants keep their heads above water. That was a pricey lesson, real. Security doesn't come from what people see. It comes from what they don't. And I stood my ground, in silence. I hung up. Ethan was staring at me. Dad, what was that about? Just business. What business? I smiled. Nothing you'd be interested in. Just a few investments I've been making. Investments? Ethan's voice had a flicker of curiosity, quickly covered by skepticism. Like small stuff? Savings accounts? Buying some auto stocks? Nothing complicated, I said, my voice as casual as can be. Just picking up a little extra on the side when I have the time. I saw the look in his eyes change. It wasn't actual respect or genuine curiosity. It was a softening of his condescension. He was thinking, oh, so Dad knows a little something about planning ahead. Probably just some small-time stuff for a mechanic. The dots in his head didn't connect to a bigger picture. They just reinforced his old bias. His dad was a hardworking, simple man who saved pennies from his meager wages to invest in little things. Dad, how many properties do you actually own? He asked. But his tone wasn't an inquiry. It was a snide trap, trying to corner me. Properties? I acted surprised, even a bit confused. Was that call about properties? No. Just some contract maintenance stuff. I drained my coffee and stood up. Ethan, your mother has always told you kids that I'm a failure, hasn't she? No, Mom, she just. He stammered. She just thinks I could have done more with my life. I nodded, wearing a look of total acceptance. Done more? Maybe she's right. Dad, maybe it really is time to start doing more. His voice was dripping with patronizing advice, like he was talking to a child. I left him standing there with an insufferable smug grin on his face. I knew for a fact he'd call his mother the second I turned my back. Not to warn her, but to brag about his discovery that Dad was playing around with some investments, the kind of mediocre investments fit for a grease monkey. And that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted them to believe I was just a beginner in the world of finance, so they'd get reckless and eager to land their final blow. Thinking they held all the cards, October 15th, my 30th anniversary party at the Riverside Hall. Sarah insisted on organizing everything herself. "It's the least I can do," she'd said, "after all the years you've sacrificed for this family." At the time, I thought she was being thoughtful. Now, looking back, I realized she was just building the stage for the final act. The hall was packed, 120 people, maybe more. Family, neighbors, old friends. The air was thick with admiration for a marriage that had stood the test of time. Uncle Robert clapped me on the shoulder. "Alex, you're a real family man. 30 years of busting your back to raise two great kids. You're the pride of this family." Aunt Martha gripped Sarah's hand. "You two are icons for the younger generation." In a world where people quit on each other so easily, 30 years is something to treasure. The party started off well. A cousin stood up to give a speech about my dedication. "Alex Thompson is the kind of man who'd give up everything for his wife and kids. Reliable as the sunrise." Everyone laughed and clapped, sharing stories about how I worked double shifts to pay Ethan's tuition, or how I postponed upgrading my own garage to buy Olivia's first car. I felt seen, respected. For the first time in months, I remembered why I used to be proud of my sacrifices. Ethan and Olivia stood in the back, constantly checking their phones. Sarah moved through the crowd, playing the proud wife role to perfection. She'd even put together a photo album of our 30-year journey. Pictures of me, covered in oil, holding the kids when they were babies. "Sarah did it all herself," people whispered. "You're so lucky to have a wife who appreciates what you've done." If only they knew. The cake cutting went as expected. More toasts to a long life together. People asked about our plans for the future. I gave vague answers. That was when Sarah stood up to speak. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she started. "Alex has worked so hard for this family for 30 years. He deserves something special." Applause broke out. Everyone thought this was a loving tribute. Marriage isn't easy when your husband has a job as dirty and sometimes dangerous as Alex's. There were nights I didn't know if he'd make it home safe. On the days with brutal weather, I worried while he was lying under cold cars. Heads nodded in sympathy. My relatives and friends looked at me with deep respect. But Alex always came back. He always provided. He always put family first. Her use of the past tense wasn't accidental. I caught it, even if no one else did. "Which is why," she continued, "this feels like the right time to make an announcement." The room went silent. This wasn't on the program. After 30 years of Alex giving his all to us, I think it's time we both started our own new separate chapters. People looked at each other, confused. New chapters? Weren't we supposed to start the next chapter together? Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a large envelope. "Alex, you've worked hard for too long. You deserve freedom. Real freedom." She handed the envelope to me. "These are divorce papers. I filed them yesterday." The silence became terrifying. 120 people watched me open the envelope to find 14 pages of legal documents demanding the end of our marriage on the very day of our 30th anniversary. But here's the thing no one expected. I smiled, not the smile of someone trying to look okay. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "Thank you, Sarah," I said calmly. "This is actually very thoughtful." No one knew how to react. Uncle Robert and Aunt Martha stood there with their mouths open. Ethan stepped forward. "Dad, Mom told us about this. We support the decision. We think it's for the best," Olivia added. For both of you. And then Ethan uttered the words that sealed their fate. Honestly, Dad, this might be the best day ever. Olivia laughed. Finally over, right? Finally free. As if my marriage ending was some kind of salvation. They'd been waiting years to celebrate this. The entire room was stunned. Relatives and friends who had known us for decades stared in shock at children celebrating their parents' divorce at their 30th anniversary gala. Kids, Uncle Robert said cautiously. Maybe this isn't the time or place. No, it's perfect, Sarah interrupted. Alex deserves to hear the truth. We all do. I stood up, still holding the divorce papers. The room was pin-drop quiet. Sarah, this is certainly honest, very honest. I hope you understand, Alex, this isn't about failure. It's about accepting reality. Reality? I repeated. Right, let's talk about reality. I folded the divorce papers neatly and tucked them into my jacket pocket. Since we're being so honest in front of all these people, I think it's time I got a little honest too. Sarah's confidence flickered. What are you talking about? I'm saying maybe it's time everyone understands what they're actually celebrating here. Ethan looked panicked. Dad, what is this? I'm talking about the reality that your mother has been sleeping with her boss, Mark Reynolds, for 8 months. A collective gasp ripped through the room. Sarah turned ghost white. I'm talking about the fact that you three planned this divorce. For months, thinking you'd strip me of half of everything you assumed I had. But the reality is, you aren't touching a single cent of my 12 properties, my tech stocks, or my Bitcoin. That $5.2 million empire is 100% mine, secured before this divorce even started. I even placed a short sell on Mark's company, The Man. Standing so triumphantly over there, just to make sure he's broke before he even thinks about touching my wife. Alex, Sarah warned, her voice trembling. Don't what? Don't tell the truth? On the 30th anniversary of me breaking my back for this family? I scanned the room, looking at every relative who had come to toast us. The truth is, Sarah filed these papers because she thinks I'm a loser. A grease monkey who never achieved anything meaningful. The truth is, my kids are celebrating because they're ashamed of how their father puts food on the table. No, that's not. Ethan started. The truth is, I cut him off. None of. You ever asked what I was doing with the money I earned? You just assumed I didn't have any. My phone vibrated. I glanced at it and smiled. Actually, the timing is perfect. Just got a text from my wealth manager. My entire portfolio of 12 rentals is officially at 100% occupancy. The system just confirmed $18,000 in passive income for this month. The confusion in the room was palpable. 12 properties? Uncle Robert asked. Yeah, suburban Detroit houses. I've been quietly buying for 15 years. The room went dead silent. Alex, Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. What are you saying? I'm saying, I said, my voice projecting to the back of the hall, that while you were planning to divorce me for half of nothing, I was generating $18,000 a month in rent. That's double what your executive boyfriend over there pulls in. Ethan's face went bloodless. Olivia had to grab the back of a chair to stay upright. And I'm saying, I continued, not letting them catch their breath, that this failure of a husband owns a net worth of $5.2 million. I opened my old leather briefcase, pulled out a tablet, and synced it to the massive projector screen behind me. The room held its breath. You think I'm worthless? I asked, my voice low but heavy. These aren't just numbers. This $2.1 million in real estate represents the nights I spent under freezing cars while you guys slept in the house I paid for. This $1.8 million in Apple and Tesla stock is the lunches I skipped to save, the new coats I never bought myself. I zoomed in on a chart, and this 15 Bitcoin, snagged in 2013 for about $700 a coin. Today, at roughly $86,400 per coin, they're worth about $1,296,000. As the words 15 Bitcoin hit the screen, Mark's hand shook so hard his red wine splashed onto his crisp white collar. Total, nearly $5.2 million. It fluctuates with the market, but it's more than enough to change everything. $18,000 a month, forever, the room erupted. Uncle Robert shouted, $18,000 a month? That's over $200,000 a year just in rent. Aunt Martha turned on Sarah, eyes blazing. You're leaving a man like this? Bill, my shop manager, let out a rebel yell. Alex, you're a freaking legend. Right as the chaos peaked, my phone rang. I hit the speakerphone. A broker's voice cut through the noise. Mr. Thompson, the SEC just announced an investigation into Reynolds Marketing for financial fraud. Their stock just tanked 65%. That short sell you placed last week, you just cleared $350,000 in profit. Congratulations. I looked straight at Mark, who looked like he was about to vomit in the corner, and said, Mechanics don't just fix engines, Mark. We fix the fates of arrogant men. Only then did I look back at Sarah. She was in total, unadulterated shock. That's impossible, she stammered. We don't have that money. My lawyer said, I get 50/50ths, equity? I asked, my voice drowning out the room. Let's talk about legal equity, Sarah. Under Michigan law, adultery is a major breach of the marital contract. With the evidence I have, the GPS logs, the hotel receipts, the recording of Mark's call in my own garage, you aren't just walking away with nothing. You're going to be lucky if you aren't paying my legal fees. I pointed at the screen. And the $5.2 million? Every document proves these are separate assets, built from separate income streams, consulting commissions, overtime, things you never contributed to or even acknowledged. Your name isn't on a single deed. I pulled a pre-signed check from my briefcase and placed it slowly on the table in front of her. This check for $35,000. It's not a legal settlement, because the law doesn't require me to give you a dime. It's a final gift. From a man who was your husband for 30 years to the mother of his kids. It's your stake to start over now. That your boyfriend has ruined himself. It's called decency, Sarah, something you lost a long time ago. I looked her in the eye, my voice dropping to the weight of a final verdict. You chose to leave this marriage. I'm choosing to let you leave a little kinder than you treated me. A lethal silence followed, broken only by Bill walking up to me. Alex, he breathed. You're serious? $5.2 million? How? It's real, Bill, I nodded. I held that Bitcoin since 2013 and bought tech stocks before the boom. Those 15 Bitcoins alone are $1.3 million now. How? Ethan choked out. How did you afford any of it? Overtime, I said simply. The night shifts, the emergency calls. Every extra hour I spent working while you guys were at home complaining that I was never around. That money went into the portfolio. Bill laughed. Alex, you magnificent bastard. You built a kingdom while we thought you were just staring at oil pans. I was still staring at oil pans, I said. That was the day job. Olivia finally found her voice. Dad, why didn't you tell us? Tell you what? That I was investing? When would that conversation have happened? Between the time you told everyone I was in a transitional phase, or when Ethan explained I was just industrial services. People in the crowd were pulling out their phones, texting the drama to anyone who wasn't there. This 30th anniversary had officially become the wildest show Riverside Hall had seen in decades. Alex, Sarah said, trying to regain some control. We need to talk privately. No, I said firmly. We're done talking privately. 30 years of private talk brought us here. Let's try public honesty for a change. My phone rings again. I look at the caller ID, my broker. Excuse me, everyone. I tell the crowd and flip on the speakerphone. Mr. Thompson, I'm calling to let you know that the SEC just officially announced an investigation into Reynolds Marketing for financial fraud. Mark Reynolds' stock just lost 65% of its value instantly. That short sell you placed earlier? It just cleared $350,000 in profit in a matter of hours. Congratulations. I look at Mark and Sarah, a thin smile on my face. Mechanics don't just fix engines, Mark. We fix the fates of traders too. I hang up and smile at Sarah. Real estate appreciates, I explain, unlike some of the other investments I've made. The sarcasm isn't subtle, and everyone gets it. Alex, what's the total monthly income? Bill asks, $18,000 a month. That's more than some people make in a year, someone shouts. Alex, you could have retired 10 years ago. I could have. But I wanted to hit the 30-year mark. Collect the full pension and benefits. Why leave money on the table? Sarah starts to realize the fallout. Alex, these properties. Are they in your name? They're in my name, all of them. All of them? Bought with income you never tracked during all those years, you didn't bother to ask about our finances. The legal weight is sinking in. In Michigan, assets acquired from separate funds during a marriage can remain separate property. Sarah's divorce papers are asking for half of assets she didn't even know existed, and legally, she has no right to touch them. Alex, Sarah stammers, we're a family. I pull out my phone and show the crowd my banking app. Sarah's divorce filing asks for half of this house and half of the savings she knows about. She can have them. The savings account she's fighting for currently has exactly $8,400 in it. People start to snicker. Sarah is demanding half of $8,000 while standing next to a man worth $5.2 million. This house is worth about $280,000, I continue. Minus the mortgage, we have about $40,000 in equity. I'm going to give her the full $35,000 as a stake to start over. Consider it a final gift to the mother of my children. So Mom only gets $35,000 total? Lethan asks. Your mother gets $35,000 plus whatever Mark Reynolds has left, which right now is a 65% drop in his net worth. Mentioning Mark's name again sends a fresh wave of whispers through the crowd. Olivia is in tears now. Dad, we didn't know. We honestly didn't know. Olivia, you never asked. None of you ever bothered to ask. Ethan takes a step forward. Dad, I'm sorry. We're all so sorry. Can we can we fix this? I look at my 26-year-old son, a law student about to graduate with massive debt and no financial plan other than hoping his parents would bail him out. Ethan, remember what you said 15 minutes ago about this being the best day ever? He nods, looking completely ashamed. Did you mean it? Dad, I was frustrated. I was caught up in what Mom was saying. Did you mean it? No, I turned to Olivia. And you? Did you mean it when you said finally free? She can't even answer. I look around the room. All the relatives and friends who came to celebrate 30 years of my home are now witnessing the total collapse of my family. The truth is, I tell the crowd, I spent 30 years providing for people who never respected what I brought to the table. I sacrificed everything for a family that saw me as a burden to be tolerated. Sarah, this paper asks for a divorce. You've got it. You asked for half of our assets. You'll get half of the assets you knew about. I signed the papers right there, in front of everyone. But the assets you didn't know about, the things I built while you were ashamed of my job, from the 12 rentals to the Bitcoin and the tech, stocks, those stay with me. I hand the signed papers back to her. Congratulations on your new freedom.
The room is dead quiet. Now, I say to the crowd, who wants cake? The party ends in a weird, heavy silence. People leave in small groups, whispering about what they just saw. A few stop to shake my hand, telling me they're proud of what I've built. Others just nod in respect and head for the door. Sarah leaves without a word. Ethan and Olivia linger behind, clearly wanting to talk but not knowing what to say. I'm stacking chairs when my phone rings. My lawyer, Patricia Reynolds. Alex, I just got a frantic call from someone claiming to be your wife's divorce attorney. Is it true you revealed massive undisclosed assets at a dinner tonight? Nothing was undisclosed, Patricia. It was just never discussed. Alex, we need to meet first thing in the morning. This changes everything. It changes everything for Sarah. For me, nothing changes. It changes everything for you too. Asset division, alimony, the whole case. I stacked the last chair. Patricia, every property is in my name, bought with separate income and managed through separate business accounts. Besides, Sarah's infidelity in the state of Michigan is going to make it very hard for her to claim anything extra. I've documented everything for 30 years. Ethan appears at my side. Dad, can we talk? I tell Patricia I'll see her in the morning and hang up. Talk, I say. Dad, we were wrong. Really wrong. Is that so? Is there any way to fix it? I look at my son. Really look at him. 26 years old, smart enough for law school, but stupid enough to celebrate his parents' divorce in public. Ethan, what exactly do you want to fix? Our relationship or this family? Relationship? You mean the one where you kept taking my money without ever asking where it came from? The one where you were embarrassed to tell people what I do? Dad, I was wrong about that. I was wrong about a lot of things. Olivia walks over, her eyes red from crying, mascara smearing. Daddy, she uses the name she hasn't called me in 10 years. I'm so sorry. What specifically are you sorry for? For not appreciating me? For being ashamed for all of it? I nod slowly. Olivia, do you remember when you needed a cosigner for your student loan? Yes, she whispered. You tried 3 other people before you finally came to me, didn't you? Yes. Why? Because you didn't think I was qualified. Because you thought I was poor. You thought we were all broke. No, Olivia, I corrected her. You just thought I was broke. Your mother managed the household finances. You knew exactly what was coming in and out. You just assumed I wasn't contributing much. She didn't admit it, but the silence said everything. Ethan, same question. When you needed money for law school, why did you act like you were doing me a favor by asking for it? I don't know. Yes, you do. Tell me. I guess I thought it would make you feel useful. Like you were finally helping with something important. Something important compared to keeping the cars in Detroit rolling for the past 30 years? He looked down. Dad, I know how bad that sounds now. Does it only sound bad now, Ethan? It sounded just as bad back then. You just didn't care how it sounded. I pulled out my phone. I'm going to make a few calls, I told them. Calls about legal matters, finances, and the practical things that would happen next. What happens next? Olivia asked. Next, your mother will get exactly what she asked for, a divorce from a man she considers a failure. But I am not a failure. I know that. The question is, what are you two going to do with that information? Ethan stood up straight. Dad, what can we do? How can we prove we've understood? I considered the question. Ethan, you're in law school. How much do you owe? About $180,000. How much do you need for your final year? $90,000. Tuition, living expenses, everything. Olivia, you want to start a business. What kind? A high-end fitness studio. I need $65,000 for the first year. Rent, equipment, marketing. I nodded. So between the two of you, you need $155,000. They exchanged hopeful glances. Here is what will happen, I continued. Your mother will soon realize that divorce is an extremely expensive affair. Her lawyer will demand full financial transparency. When she learns about the 12 properties, the stock portfolio, and those 15 bitcoins, she will realize she made a very, very costly mistake. Will Mom get any of the rental income? Ethan asked. Not a single cent. With the evidence of adultery I have, she will only receive exactly the $35,000 I promised her to restart her life. That's not a lot of money to live on in this city, Olivia said. That is what she chose. I put my phone away and looked at both of them. Each of you has asked me for a large sum of money, money that I have and that you need. They nodded. But you asked as if I should be grateful that you gave me the opportunity to help. As if providing for you were a privilege you were generously granting me. I'm not finished. You want to fix our relationship? Here's how it works. Respect must be earned through actions, not demanded through bloodlines. If you think a few apologies will make me immediately shell out $155,000, you are dead wrong. You want my help? Show me you understand what help means. How? Ethan asked. Find out for yourselves. You are both adults, educated and intelligent. If you cannot find a way to earn your father's respect, perhaps you do not deserve his money. I walked straight toward the exit. Dad, wait, Olivia called out. Do you mean you won't help us? I turned back. I mean, help is something you petition from people you respect, not something you demand from people you are ashamed of. And with that, I left them standing in the empty Riverside Hall, finally understanding what they had lost. The next 3 months unfolded exactly as I had predicted. Sarah's divorce lawyer, Martin Hendris, demanded full financial disclosure. When I produced the records for my 12 rental properties, tech stock portfolio, and 15 bitcoins, his confidence evaporated faster than morning frost. Mr. Thompson, he said during the first mediation, this portfolio is substantial. My client was completely unaware of these assets. Your client never bothered to ask about these assets, my lawyer, Patricia Reynolds, replied. In 30 years of marriage to a man working constant overtime, she never once wondered where that money went. The math is simple. Under Michigan law, adultery is a serious breach of the marital contract. All my properties and investment assets were purchased with personal income, held in my name alone, and managed through separate business accounts since 2008. This is clearly separate property, Patricia explained. Mr. Thompson can prove that every down payment, every repair, every improvement was funded by his individual labor. Sarah sat across the table, looking as if she had been struck. Alex, this isn't fair. We were married. I supported your career. Sarah, you are ashamed of my career. There's a huge difference. The final divorce settlement was signed in December 2024. Based on the undeniable evidence of adultery, Sarah understood that if she went to court, she could walk away with nothing. She accepted $35,000 I voluntarily gave her as a parting gift to restart her life, along with the 2018 Honda Accord. She moved into a one-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, working a part-time job at Target. Mark Reynolds, the flashy boss, ended his relationship with her just 2 weeks after the revelations about my assets came to light. Furthermore, 3 months later, Mark was officially indicted on 12 counts of financial fraud following his company's collapse. It seems that dating someone with no money was no longer attractive to a criminal facing prison time. Our neighborhood suddenly understood the truth. She abandoned a millionaire to chase a financial criminal, neighbor Susan told me. She always talked about Alex's lack of ambition. Now we know who truly lacked vision. Sarah's sister stopped speaking to her. Her book club also found reasons to meet without her. Meanwhile, financial reality crashed down on Ethan with merciless severity. Detroit winters are bone-cutting. With no safety net and having been politely asked to leave a temporary room by friends, Ethan had no choice but to huddle in the back seat of a beat-up car. It was in that soul-crushing cold, as the smell of gasoline and grime from the upholstery seeped into his skin, that he truly felt, in a brutal and naked way, how his father had lived for 30 years. Every breath in that cramped space was a wake-up call. His father had traded cleanliness, comfort, and perhaps his own self-esteem, just to buy comfort for a family that never truly understood him. The humiliation of bathing in gas station sinks forged a different Ethan, smaller, harder, and completely lost. Then, the deadline of reality hit. Tuition for his final year of law school, $90,000, loomed like a death sentence. The money he had always assumed would be there from his family was a shattered concept. 3 days after Christmas, when it was almost too late, the first call came. Dad, I need to talk to you. About school, or about money, Ethan. My voice was flat, not a single ripple. About that. I can't cover the final year. The loans only cover 60%. That's unfortunate for you. I said nothing more. Dad, I know I was wrong. We were all wrong. His voice was hurried, weak. But I'm short $30,000. If I don't pay by January 15th, I'm out. Ethan, I asked slowly, letting each word drip like honey. What exactly are you asking of me? Are you asking to borrow $30,000 from the shadow of the lowly mechanic you used to be ashamed of? Borrow means I'll pay it back. I have a plan. He sounded assertive, but his voice shook. A plan? When? After you graduate? After you become a lawyer? So, 5, 7 years from now? I let the silence stretch long enough for him to hear his own ragged breathing over the phone. Dad, are you still there? I'm still here, I said, my voice deep and distant. I'm just remembering what you said at the anniversary party. Do you remember? What? You said that our divorce was probably the best day ever. Dad, I explained that. I was confused. Ethan, I don't lend money to people who consider my personal disaster their best day ever. That's just being fair. He hung up. Olivia's crisis came 2 weeks later. Her business loan was rejected. $65,000 to start her fitness studio. Without a cosigner, the bank wouldn't approve. Dad, I know you're mad at us, but this is my dream. Olivia, what makes you think your dream is my responsibility? Because you're my father. Being your father didn't stop you from being ashamed of my job. I was young then. I was stupid. You were 23. That's not a child. That's an educated adult. Dad, please, I'll pay you back. I'll pay interest, whatever you want. What I wanted was a family that respected me. What I have is a family that just wants my money. This isn't about money, Olivia, but it's entirely about money. 6 months ago, you wouldn't even mention my job to your friends. Today, you're calling me for $65,000. What changed? I've changed. We've all changed. No, you haven't changed. Your circumstances have changed. There's a difference. The third call came from Sarah herself in February. Alex, we need to talk. No, we don't. The kids are struggling financially. Ethan might have to drop out of law school. Ethan should have thought about that before he celebrated our divorce. Alex, please, I know I made a mistake, but don't punish the kids for my choices. Sarah, I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just done rescuing people. They're adults, and they made a choice. They chose you, thinking it brought happiness. So everyone got what they wanted. You have your freedom, they have their ideals to protect, and I have the truth. Alex, I realize now I made a mistake. A massive mistake. You realized it when you saw my real estate portfolio. That's not a realization, Sarah. You filed for divorce after 8 months behind my back with Mark Reynolds. You didn't realize anything. You just got caught. She tried a different approach. What if we went to counseling? What if we tried to fix this? Sarah, we're divorced. You can't fix a divorce. We could remarry. The audacity was staggering. You want to remarry me for my money? I want to remarry because I love you. You love my money. There's a difference. By March, both Ethan and Olivia were working retail jobs to pay the bills. Ethan had deferred his studies. Olivia moved in with Sarah to split the rent on a 1-bedroom apartment. The family that once celebrated my failure was now tasting what real failure felt like. And finally, I had peace. 6 quiet months passed. On my porch, I scrolled through my rental income reports. $18,000 had hit my account this morning, along with a brief notification. Tesla hit a new peak. Everything was running like clockwork. The phone rang. Ethan, Dad, can I come over? I want to talk to you. About what? About understanding. An hour later, he knocked. He looked different, older, more tired. The cockiness of a law student had been replaced by something more grounded. Dad, I found a job at a small mechanic shop. I started as an assistant, just washing cars and cleaning the floors for minimum wage. It's honest work. It is. And do you know what I realized, Dad? What people respect is genuine labor. My manager treats me better than I ever treated you. I nodded. People only respect what they understand. Dad, I want to earn back your respect, not for the money, but because I truly want to change. How? I don't know yet, but I'll find out. 3 weeks later, Olivia called. Dad, I'm working at Starbucks as a barista. I'm studying on my own and saving every penny to open my own studio. It's hard, but I like the feeling of earning my own way. I see. Olivia, are you calling to ask for something? No, I'm calling to say thank you for teaching us the lesson that respect isn't something you inherit. It's something you have to win for yourself. 2 years later, my firm's stance finally bore fruit. Ethan, after months of manual labor, became a real mechanic. He found pride in the work he once despised. Olivia also built her first fitness studio, funded by a loan she signed for using her own hard-earned credit. As for Sarah, she was still working at Target, still wondering where it all went wrong. 3 years after that fateful party, on my way to check a rental property, I stopped at a red light across from an old hotel. There, in a faded security uniform directing traffic into a parking lot, was Mark Reynolds. The once flashy boss in his wrinkle-free suits now stood with slumped shoulders under the biting Detroit sky. His hollow gaze drifted over the truck I was driving, a brand-new Ford F-150 Raptor, then fixed back on the traffic. He didn't recognize me. Maybe that was for the best. I smiled, a soft, unintentional smile. Fate had balanced the scales with its own hands, more ruthlessly and effectively than any revenge plot I could have devised. One afternoon at the supermarket, I ran into Linda, the neighbor who used to smirk whenever she mentioned the smell of the garage coming from my house. She was standing in the checkout line in a retail uniform, looking exhausted. "Hello, Linda," I said. She startled, her face flushing with embarrassment. "Alex, hello, I'm sorry for everything I said back then." "It's all right, Linda," I smiled. "Everyone has the right to judge, and I understand that sometimes appearances lead people to quick conclusions." "No, it was my own narrow-mindedness," she choked out. "My husband lost his job. We're struggling. Now I understand the value of steady work and honest hands. You're extraordinary." I nodded and handed her a business card for my vocational school. "If he's interested, have him come by. We always welcome those who truly want to learn a trade." On another occasion, Sarah came to find me, sobbing out an apology. I responded with the calm that had become my trademark. "I don't hate you. I just regret the 30 years that passed." 2 years later, the Thompson Auto Academy had trained over 200 young people in Detroit. One evening, I sat in my large house, holding a glass of whiskey with hands that still bore the permanent calluses of my trade. Those calluses reminded me of who I am. Before me sat an old, rusted wrench, right next to plaques for million-dollar real estate achievements. Ethan called, his voice deep and mature after 2 years as a mechanic. "Dad, I just got my law degree. I want to thank you for everything." I remained silent. Olivia sent a text. A photo of her first fitness studio. Last month, Sarah called, sobbing because her rented apartment was being foreclosed due to debt. I could have cleared that debt with a single month of my passive income. But I didn't. I simply sent her the contact information for a support organization. I looked in the mirror, not to see a millionaire, but to see the mechanic who was brave enough to be silent and strong enough to walk alone. The price of Bitcoin can fluctuate, from $700 in 2013 to about $86,400 today, but self-respect is not something you can negotiate. Some say I am cruel, some say I am fair. As for me, I'm just teaching them the final lesson I learned over 30 years. Every choice comes with an invoice, and eventually you have to pay it yourself. If you have ever been underestimated because of your job, remember this: there is no shameful work, only a shameful attitude toward life. My secret is simple: work hard with honesty, save smartly, never stop learning, and most importantly, sometimes stay silent. Because silence isn't weakness, it's gathering energy for the decisive strike. Never underestimate a man with grease on his hands. Those hands might just be holding an empire. And if my story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the true value of labor and patience, show me. Click subscribe to this channel right now. Not just to support me, but to support your own story, the story of respect for every honest profession. So do you think Alex was right or too cruel? Was his refusal to save Sarah from debt the ultimate justice or unnecessary revenge? Comment fair if you support Alex's hard-won lesson, or too much if you think kindness should rise above revenge. And tag a friend who has been underestimated. Sometimes all they need is to know they aren't alone.